So I think, Lisa, we'll kick things off now. I think we've been patient for those folks jumping from meeting to meeting, getting their cups of tea and doing what they need to get from one meeting to another. Welcome to Propel Canada, everybody on the call, brought to you by iPipeline Canada. We're delighted to bring you content focused on strategic matters as well as sessions for our Worldsource community, which we're running over the next 3 weeks now, and we've got 6 more sessions. Today is our industry panel. Looking forward to the discussion today. Coming up, we have a session on business intelligence, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and ETL, and all of the jargon associated with getting results from analytics. It's a really results-focused session. We're looking forward to on December the 1st, so hopefully a lot of you folks can come and register for that in the same place that you did for this session. On the operational track, we have recordings available for investment sessions that we've had, but coming up we have sessions on data feeds, tools in our investments platform, and more insights into our support team, which we're hoping the Worldsource community can join us for. But today we are putting together a discussion on the fact that we don't think things are ever going to be the same again, and COVID has changed us, I think, irrevocably. And today we've assembled a panel of folks to discuss whether or not we think that's a bad thing or not. So what I'm going to do is just start to go around the room. I don't know if Dennis has been able to join us yet from RBC. He's certainly in the hot seat if he's been able to make it. So Dennis, I'm hoping you're here to just give us a quick 1-minute introduction. And if not, then it'll be on to you, Dave. So Dennis, did you manage to get to us? Evidently not. So hopefully Dennis will be able to come and find us soon. So I will pass over to Dave at CPP.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks for inviting me today. Happy to be part of the panel. I've been working in a number of industries helping digital transformations for the past 20 years, from big pharma to retail to banking, and now I've been at insurance with Canada Protection Plan leading their technology group. And they had me start just before COVID, so it was I had a few weeks head start, but it's been a very exciting journey, and I was there plenty of time to be part of the amalgamation with Forrester's, which is great. So I head up their technology group.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to pass over to Heidi.
Heidi MacDonald, Financial Horizons, Executive Operations Officer and Senior Vice President. I've been with Financial Horizons for almost 16 years. Oh, there we go. And I have been working in my home primarily, but able to head into the office and excited to be here. Thanks for everyone for coming.
Thanks, Heidi. And over to Phil Marsillo.
Hi, Simon. Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Marsillo. I'm with IDC. Been there for almost 3 years now and been in the industry since a very, very long time. So looking forward to exchanging and learning from the group here.
Great stuff. And then finally over to Steve from Empire. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Simon. First, let me thank you, Simon, for inviting me to join this session with these distinguished panelists. I'm the SVP of Retail for Empire Life. I've been with Empire Life for 23 years, and I thought I've seen a lot of change in those 23 years, but I think I've seen more change in the last year versus my entire 23 years with Empire Life.
Appreciate that, Steve. And that really is a great segue into really the first question I want to give each of you a couple of minutes to address. And that is, I think, the belief that things won't ever go back to the way they were. And Dave, because of alphabetical supremacy, I'm going to go to you first. What have you seen, and what do you think is good or bad?
Well, I think in general it is good. There's definitely opportunities there, and if you look at the way the marketplace is and how consumers are driving the market expectations is to have a fast, intuitive consumer journey, which is rich with all the cumbersome data, delivering outcomes quickly. So like people's today people's attention span is less than a goldfish, which means we need to have solutions which are bespoke, but at the same time ubiquitous. So like a good example is this Zoom meeting or Teams meetings where the expectation is that I see Simon's face perfectly. So I think that's great that it's been a catalyst for technology to set expectations and to make sure that people can have that amazing journey, logging into the insurance portals or accessing their whatever they need to do in a seamless fashion. So I think that's really amazing. That's one of the big changes. Even remote workforce is another very big change, which is very interesting, and how that can influence and push things forward and give the opportunity. So like looking from workforce at home to workforce, even the office spaces being more collaborative and targeted, so that you, when you do go into the actual office, they're made like you have an outcome driven for that purpose. You're not just going to the office nowadays for a normal day to day. And similar with the work from home, there's also advantages for that as well. And taking workforce from wherever you want, where us being in Toronto today, now we don't need to hire in Toronto. We can hire from Winnipeg. We can hire from wherever we want in the country to provide those services. So I think great things in general. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Thanks for that, Dave. So just encourage everybody, feel free to use the chat to throw questions, try and make this as interactive as we can. Thanks, Dave. I know our business has changed in ways that I didn't think it was going to be. So Heidi, I'm going to put you on.
Perfect. Sorry, I think you cut out there a little bit. So stole a couple of things I was going to mention, but that's okay. So just on the same vein of remote work, it's amazing that in the past we felt that we had to arrive at work every day, sit in our office in order to feel that we put in a solid day's work. The opportunities to be able to hire people coast to coast has never been more than now. And I would say there's also an impact on that as well in a negative way, that we really need to ensure our people are happy and comfortable where they are, because there is exposure out there as well of a risk of our good people actually going to another organization. But further to Steve's point, I've been in the industry for 16 years. There has been more movement in the last 8 to 9 months than there has been in the entire 16 years. And I think it's just the pace of change. It's the pace of Zoom meetings, team meetings, back to back. I know we're all in them. I would hope that a little bit of that will change, and we'll have an opportunity for a little bit of the interaction face to face in the future. But I think we can all agree that hopping on a plane from here to there in order to go to a meeting is probably in the past, and now it'll be more of a targeted meeting for sure.
Thanks, Heidi. And Phil, things are never going to change. Is that bad?
Well, I don't think it's bad. There is some, though, and I mean, some of my comments aren't going to surprise anybody here. We've all lived the same experience. I think the fact that we had to adapt so quickly as an industry, Steve mentioned, I think there's been more change in the last year than there has been in the last, he said 20 years, I'd probably say 40 years. Like at the end of the day, everybody was able to adapt really, really quickly from all fronts, from carriers, advisors, MGAs, distributors, etc. We've all had to go through that change, and we've done really well. If anybody, and I'm sure everybody on the phone would say the same thing, if we would have been asked back in March that come November 24th, we'd all be still in a lockdown to some degree. Would we have survived? What would it have looked like? And I think we'd all be very pleased. There are some things that I'm a little concerned with. So the positives are what I've always believed in is you hire the right talent regardless of where they live, right? And technology has helped that. And I still believe in what we're doing today to some degree can be argued is still face-to-face. Like we see each other, which is face-to-face. You're not in person, but it's still a face-to-face discussion. Like I said, the challenge is it really blurs the lines between work and life. And I think we have to be careful there. I think there's going to be a bit of an uptake here as an industry and as a society in terms of mental fatigue and mental health challenges, because it's kind of hard. Like I'm in my office here doing some work, and at the end of the day, I can easily text my wife and say I'm going to be home, and 12 seconds later, if I go upstairs first and then back on the main floor, I'm in the dining room, right? So I think there's some adoption and changes that we have to all do. So there is some challenge, I think, and even from a hiring perspective and getting people to engage in the culture, we're doing the best we can, but at the same time, it's I think it can be a little bit of a challenge. So there's some good, but we can't forget that when we had those meetings in person, flesh to flesh kind of deal, there was some benefits there as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Phil. And then Steve, I'll pass on to you. Things not going to change, bad or good? I think I know where you're going to go with this one.
Well, I think the change was a wake-up call, which I would say is largely good. And maybe there's some challenges in front of us. And I will say it's a wake-up call because I think every one of us involved in running our businesses had to focus on our primary purpose, which was to take care of customers and their financial security. And I think as Phil has mentioned, the industry adapted quite quickly from insurers to agencies to advisors to find ways to take care of customers. I think that was, sometimes a great reminder for ourselves of why we're in business. Phil's also mentioned that we've adapted. I don't think insurance companies can be accused of being nimble and agile. And I think we as an industry demonstrated that when push comes to shove, you can find ways to adapt, not only to support our partners, again, but our customers, not only on the front end of the business, but also on the back end in terms of paying claims and fulfilling our obligations. And then I think the last thing that was important to us, the revenue pressures that we all faced, again, reminded us to stick to the fundamentals of our business and really challenge ourselves in where we add value and how we can become more efficient. And certainly in terms of digitization of the business is at the core of that. So I think it was largely good. It was frightening along the way for many reasons in terms of the safety of our employees. But I think it will be a reminder of the things that we need to do to continue to sustain our businesses into the future.
Thanks, Steve. That's good stuff there. And I
Simon,
believe
I don't know if you can hear me. It's Dennis Craig on
Hey,
the
Dennis.
line, but not on the Zoom because of some technical challenges.
So Dennis, thanks for joining us. So question is the change a bad thing from where you're sat?
I'll probably, I heard some of the comments, so I'll leave some of those. But I think one of the things is it's realized us and forced us we need to move much more rapidly on the digital front. We've made, over the years, as someone had mentioned, we have made progress. Last few years, we've made progress, but there's a wake-up call that we need to move much, much faster. The second thing is that working from home will never work productivity-wise. Our experience, we have 99% of our staff working from home. Our main office buildings are actually closed, shut down with the lights off. And ironically, for us and for RBC overall, productivity has gone up and the error rates have actually gone down. So fundamental shift in the way that we actually do work, and I think that's going to change forever. I've heard some of the other comments covered that off, but the other thing is it forced advisors as well into more digital interaction. And ironically, they're starting to see that the clients like that. Sometimes it's, for mapping their days out rather than traveling all over the place, it's much more efficient. And you can get clients easily at off hours. So a lot of those things basically are forcing us to change. We needed to, and this is kind of an impetus and a good thing to move us all forward.
Yeah, a real catalytic mechanism. And so next things to think about, though, wanted to get everyone talking about was what's been the biggest surprise that you've had so far, and maybe the biggest disappointment you've had, as the move to sort of remote working and non-face-to-face happens. I'm going to point that at Heidi, just to start with, when you look at the business.
So if we're tailoring the question around remote work, I I have to tend to agree. I was one of those individuals that felt like you needed to be in the office to actually be productive. So a big mind shift for sure in our organization. But when I really look at the surprises, so the pace of change for everybody and the reaction to it has really been key. I think the biggest surprise was for us was how quickly the carriers adapted from everything in their control. And when they actually were able to adjust the age and amount tables and the fluid requirements for paramedical and the underwriting, that was a big surprise to us, and we quite welcomed it. A disappointment? Did you want me to touch on disappointment?
Yeah, anything caught you out that's not so great?
So I think although everyone has been focusing and working very hard on trying to have a digital way of doing business, some things seem to be half-baked solutions, and really not. So the customer service or the customer experience maybe not kept in mind. So the end user experience might have been adjusted in order for a solution to fit on one end, but not the other, I think would be. But that is slowly working itself out as we're getting through into this next 9 months. So.
Yeah, so we went from being frozen and analysis paralysis to throwing solutions out that maybe weren't quite ready for prime time.
Right.
Maybe it's better that way around. Steve, I'm going to point that one at you. What's been your biggest surprise on the positive front, and maybe your biggest disappointment?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say surprise, but maybe it goes back to the adaptability and speed. I think there was, the insurers along with our partners, very quick to adapt. First and foremost, with the focus on taking care of customers and their employees, and there was fantastic cooperation. So I think that I don't want to characterize it as a surprise, but it was very, very beneficial, and I think the industry acted very responsibly to do what we could do. I would say with respect to disappointment, maybe not necessarily disappointment, it was the reality about the people side of our business. Boy, do I miss some of our team members, missing interacting with our partners, that whole flavor that allows you to feel a part of what we're trying to do. I think our organizations, everyone is feeling that. And then certainly the concern about mental health issues within the organization. We really want to solve that. We don't want any of our team members having to face the stresses that are currently happening today. So I would say those are concerns, less so than disappointment.
Dave, over to you. Biggest surprises?
Biggest surprise is, and I know we talked about it in the previous question as well, is just really the adoption, and like this being a catalyst and driving, be it from regulators or other areas, to just allow us to do that, have that digital journey. So you look at even where I bank and you do investments, everything is now digital signature, where before it was maybe not. And similar with us at Canada Protection Plan, end-to-end digital experience for our consumers. So I think that's been a surprise, that everyone's been able to adopt the technology so quickly, and similar with the Teams and Zoom and all of those things. On the flip side, the disappointment that comes with that is the fact that there is a bit of a disparity, right? Some people will pick it up really quickly, and the businesses have been able to pivot quickly to put them in place. But then there is a disparity between folks that maybe don't have access to it, or we're not trained in that area. So then are we kind of leaving them behind, because that continuous learning and rapid learning that's needed in such a rapid change is challenging as well. So it's a bit, I guess that would be my only disappointment, is how do you address that for the public at wide, and even within the organization, to make sure that everybody's going down the same path, right?
Yep. And Dennis, I hope we're coming through loud and clear.
Okay.
Biggest surprise?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a couple of surprises. Some of the organizations had a lack of any BRP plans in place and kind of closed their doors and threw it up in the air. So that was a little bit of a shock to us, and it wasn't necessarily the MJ side of the house. So that was a little bit of a surprise with that. And the other one that I guess was a bit of a surprise and more in how quickly it impacted us was the change with regards to the paramedic labs. That all of a sudden, it went from we're booking and then we're still booking, and then all of a sudden it was gone. Understandable, but frustrating. And that was, I think, a bit of a challenge to all of us. I was surprised, as a couple of the other folks have talked about, that just how quickly we reacted. I'm not saying we did an amazing job, but things like our interim delivery process, it would normally take us as a company 9 to 12 months to work on. We did in 3 months. And I think Steve was saying some of the other changes that happened so rapidly, which was, I guess, a tribute to all of us. The other bit of surprise, and I guess maybe it shouldn't have been, was there was a bit of deer in the headlights reactions. Everybody decided, what do I do? Is this just temporary? Is this 1 week, 2 week annoying? Or do I have to go into full, recovery mode and change my business? So that's kind of some of the things we've seen. We are worried. We've seen some disability claims, not an abnormally large amount, because of COVID, but we are worried in the spring where you get, a cold winter, it's dark, and then with the lockdown said there's going to be more claims and mental health issues on certainly on that side.
Sure. And Phil, biggest surprise and disappointment? I'm sure you've got something to add.
Well, in person, I would be a little bit different. On the phone, I'd be tamer. I'd say a lot of the comments have already been made, and so I'm not sure if it's a surprise or not, but at the rate that we've talked about this forever now, the way we've adapted, right? So I've always found that with the quality of people in this industry, when push comes to shove, we can react and adapt really, really quickly. And I think everybody's done that. And some of the decisions, were done and they were fluid and they were changing because this is the first time any of us have lived this. None of the BCP plans that I know I've been involved in my previous life and here as well with IDC, in terms of expecting, none ever predicted that we'd be shut down for 9 months or go into complete lockdown. There was always issues about something would happen to a building, something would happen to a city. This is a worldwide pandemic. Everything has changed. So the rate at which decisions were made and the fluidity of those decisions, some we can argue, they were temporary. They weren't, the exact decision you wanted to go with. But it's hard to blame people for actually trying to keep this thing going. So I think it's again, it's not a surprise necessarily, but it's at the speed of which we've had to adapt to the reality. Disappointment. I mean, this. I'll say it because to me, it's like we've almost forgotten as we've embraced this new world, that a phone still exists. And I'm not talking about a landline, but the days of before having phone calls with people, now everything seems to be a Zoom, a webinar. It's a one of these conversations, and there's a whole ton of new meetings that all of a sudden are popping up everywhere. So I think all of us, I'm pretty sure, we spend our days in front of our computer screen looking at people and engaging, and we're in the past. You have meetings in a boardroom, in a meeting room. You had travel time. Now you're going meeting to meeting to meeting with a computer screen all the time. And so sometimes I think the thing I miss is just being able to get on a phone and just have a conversation 30 seconds on a phone call versus one of these, right? So,
yeah, that's a good segue into the next question, which is what have we done that's here to stay? And how are we going to build on that? So I'm going to start with, I'm going to pick on Dave to start with that one. What have we got that's good, and what should we be building on?
I think what's here to stay and what we're building on would be like definitely that safety and security mindset is now instilled in everyone, especially like what you guys are mentioning about the BCP, but it's both the physical, like even with people wearing masks, and I'm not saying that's going to continue, but from that to protecting your business from a BCP perspective. So I think that's definitely here to stay. And you look at other threats that we could have potentially. So I think it's going to be built on for sure. And that's definitely going to be a lot more people will be mindful of that physical and logical security in the environment, at their home, and in the workplace. So I think that's one of the things that's here to stay stronger than ever, that will have a lot more focus.
And the same question over to you, Steve. What's here to stay, and what is now foundational as you look forward?
Yeah, so I think we've crossed the tipping point where digitization on our front end processes is clearly more than 50%. So I think the industry's adopted to that. I don't think there's going backwards. There may be segments of our partnerships that certain advisors may still stick to the way they currently do business, but I think that's here to stay, and that will continue to progress where there's more digitization. And I want to say that correctly. It's reimagining our processes through digital, not just digitizing what we're doing. And I would say the other things that's probably here to stay is we're all probably curious about flexible work arrangements, work from home, work in office, and what's the right combination for that will continue to have both productivity and efficiency benefits, along with getting the work done, still having the good organizational relationships we need to feel a part of something. So I think that's here to stay. And then at the end of the day, what has endured through this entire journey this year is customers want financial protection, and they still seek advice, and independent advice is still extremely important, and that's here to stay.
Phil, I'm going to pass that back to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I agree with what Steve just said. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that whole process, of underwriting a case and simplicity of using a digital to the extent of a contract being issued digitally, I think that's something we have to make sure it does not go back to where it used to be. So if you do a process, if you want to apply digitally, then you should be able to get the contract as well. It works, right? We've had to adapt where an electronic signature makes a lot of sense. Having access to information makes a lot of sense. Where we think we got to go is we got to be able to consolidate a client's view by all carriers, so that when we deal with advisors, we should be able to come to our site, IDC, or any one of the other organizations, and say, you log into the IDC site or whoever, and you have access to all of your clients' information into one consolidated report. I think that's something we got to push forward. We've learned during this pandemic, we can't let that go. I think the other thing that's going to stay is how we bring training forward. Like, we've always had the concept of we had to have meetings in person, and now I find that you can embrace this technology to have almost training on demand. And some of us have done that before as well. So you have a library of videos to go see, but I think it helps with the carriers as well, where they have one superstar presenter who knows the topic, and rather to make sure that the experience is consistent for national organization, that person provides a live webinar and develops and brings forth that training, and then it's recorded and it's accessible to advisors in the future. So I think those are some of the things that are here to stay and that we can build on going forward. The advice, for sure, I don't think that'll change. We've witnessed it. There's more people going online to do a lot of the shopping, get the education, but they want the comfort. They want to speak to a live person to, reinforce their thought process, their learnings, and help them stick to a plan, right? So I think those are things that we can still build on going into the future.
Dennis, good to see you. You're on mute, sir. Let me unmute you.
It's a learning process with Dennis, as we all know, right, Dennis?
First He's just bouncing between mediums.
In the video, now the mute. That's good, Dennis.
Oh, and we still got him muted. Sorry, Dennis. Dennis, I think we have audio problems. So we've got video. Well,
I can
while
just
you try
add,
and sort,
Simon, Dennis and I have had great conversations the last couple of days. For the first time, he's actually listened to when I've been talking.
well, I'll pass it to Heidi while Dennis hopefully navigates his audio. What's here to stay?
Oh, I thought I just heard him. So an increased focus on, obviously, so we're talking about the digital. I think we can all agree on that. We've really been focused on feeds, and I know as an organization, we've been focused on feeds, but I think that's really just the start. The end state, as you said, Phil, is really a consolidated client advisor view, right? So being able to have access to all of your clients and all of your information in a consolidated source and view, whether that's on the API, direct link to carrier sites or what have you, but that's really where the focus is. Speaking about the e-apps for a moment, I think we all have experienced a spike in e-apps, and hopefully that's here to stay. A little bit have gone down and kind of gotten caught into the old ways of doing things, but really that is a piece that, so we are up 100% from where we were before, and we really see that as staying. And I would say as an industry, there are even some folks and some products that weren't on an e-app platform before, and they're already reaching a majority on e-app, and it was just launched. So I don't think that's going anywhere. If anything, that's going to be expanded, which is a great thing. I know you touched on this, Phil, the e-signatures. I think obviously they're here to stay. We need to expand on that a little bit, and ideally have multi-source, multi-program availability. I know we have some areas that are focused on one provider or a single provider. I think that's an area where, from an advisor's experience or a client experience, to have an end-to-end from the advisor system straight through to the carrier and having an e-signature platform tie in. So I think it's coming, and hopefully it's here to stay.
Yeah, and I think, Dennis, you cracked audio. So yeah, what's here to stay, my friend?
Are we good? You can hear me? There
Yep.
we go. Yeah, what's here to stay is my love for IT throwing technical changes first thing in the morning. No, I think some of them have been touched on already. I think, and I think Steve mentioned a little bit, understanding what the consumer's expectations are and how they want to interact with us is a huge thing. And we've just started to understand that lately. You know, the purchasing patterns have changed, the use of online have changed, how they interact has changed. And so I think that is here to stay. We need to evolve forward and move forward on how we can do that. I think the quicker adaptation of digital is here to stay. I know from a carrier point of view, the funding and the priority and the dollars and the focus is now here to stay. It was always a challenge balancing off with other things, but we realize this is the way that we really need to go. And to the comments on data, it was quite interesting. Heidi was talking about the need for consolidated, and Phil, just a comment on the wholesaler side, because we looked at a study that was recently done by Limber and EY, and it was talking about the value of wholesalers and the change in that wholesaling role. And a big part of that was data. And what it was saying is, I will value the wholesaler of the future much more if he or she can bring me understanding of my business, understanding of my opportunities, understanding of what perhaps the next best actions are for various customers based on their segments. And that will require more data. So the use of data on the wholesaling side will change. It's also changing a bit the way the wholesalers operate. It'll change us on the customer interaction, customer expectation side. And I think we've learned that some transactions, simple ones, straightforward ones, can be done digitally, don't need any touch point at all. Some will require a bit of both, and then some will be obviously high touch, high feel as they deal with more complex, larger cases or unique situations.
Thanks, Dennis. Anything to add, Heidi? Sorry, did I?
No, it's fine.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure to pick up. So, Dennis, actually, I wanted to add on that comment, and a question that hadn't surfaced before, but I think you touched on it, is, and I think Steve did earlier, when we look at the business and think about how we've been organized traditionally, I think you touched on it there, Dennis, is like, what do you see as one of the big changes in structure that you're contemplating right now as you look at the way maybe you were operating before and are going to choose to operate going forward? Is there anything, shouting at you that it is going to undergo change, sort of immediate change? So I'm going to point that one over to you, Steve. So as you think sort of pre and post COVID organization is structurally,
I think with digital, the possibilities are quite vast in terms of our classic view of how you organize to support a marketplace. So typically, you see in an insurance organization where we're limited by the fact that we still have some maybe paper processes and we're organized in classic functions. I think there's an opportunity in the future in a digitized environment that you really could tailor your teams, be cross-functional or designated or dedicated, to support any myriad of partners, depending on what their wants are. And I guess the view I would have is it used to be very difficult, it still is to a certain degree, for insurance companies to try to customize things to support partners, in particular in the paper world. But with digital, that opportunity is in front of us, that customization is easier. I'm not going to say it's simple, it's easier. And I think that holds great promise for having very deep partnerships, figuring out what they want to do, and how they specifically want to interact with either their advisors and or customers, with the notion that you can treat customers differently, as opposed to trying to cast, kind of a homogeneous net. So I think there's tremendous possibilities in the future in a digitized environment.
So thanks for that, Steve. So I'm going to bounce it all the way over to Phil. From an organizational standpoint, what do you see as opportunity, and what's in your mind that you think you might want to shake up?
Well, we talk a lot about digitalization, right? And it's digitalization doesn't necessarily mean that whatever you're doing today, how can we do it in a digital format? So when you're writing things up, don't write them for, the brochures that we used to hand out, those glossy brochures, but do write that information in keeping in mind technology and digital. But with that, I think one of the concerns I have is that everybody, and their brother is speaking about digitalization, digitalize this and that and the other thing. At the end of the day, there's got to be some synergies and some savings as well. Like, we're all spending quite a bit of money into this, and I think that the intent is right. I think we do have to move as an industry, but we have to start to see some of those synergies and some savings translated for our organizations as well, because just getting a digital app, it hasn't necessarily changed our processes internally either. There's still a lot of manual intervention. So how do we get some synergies there? So it's got to be smoother going along. We're investing in a lot of different avenues, from licensing, contracting, CE, new business, statements, etc. But I don't know about the other organization. I don't think our costs have come down overall, right? So it's got to be a give and take. If all we're going to do is run things in two separate ways, and we can grab some efficiencies, like at one point, we got to make some money. When you look at all these industries that have come into the, the Ubers, Airbnbs, it was easy for them to disrupt. Like, they had nothing to start off with. So you can easily do that. And even though they're not making money, though, their valuations are ridiculous when you think of it from a shareholder perspective in terms of what the company's going to be worth down the line. We don't live in that world. Like, we want to look at our valuations today, tomorrow, and 5 years from now. So I think we got to start seeing how we can integrate this process seamlessly from advisor to the MGA to the manufacturer. Our roles are going to change in this, where the role of an MGA is going to change over time. The role of a carrier is going to change, other than you provide product and support and enforce. But we got to streamline the processes, and you got to keep in mind the process from the start to the end, which is the consumer. How do they want to be dealt with? How does the advisor want to be dealt with? How does the MGA get involved? for us to win and for all of us to be on the same page. So I think that's what I'd like to share.
So nothing minor there then, Phil, that you want to change. You just want to axe the whole supply chain, put it back together.
If we have everybody working towards that one, and we know we could be done, like, again, come back to March. Like, who would have said that pretty much 95% of the insurance company staff and MGA staff would be working from home, and to, overall, the level of service, I think, has been good. Like, it's been slippage, of course there is. There's going to be examples, there always will be. But overall, who would have said back in March that 9 months later, the industry would be where it is, and it's the way it's been able to adapt. So with the right mindset, under the right pressures, and with the right people going into aiming for the right thing, the same thing, I think it's doable, and we don't have to wait another 20 years to figure this out.
Yep, that's good. Points well made. Heidi, anything you see in terms of your organization and things that, under the spotlight for reorg or change, just close at hand?
Yeah, just further to Phil's point, I think we're all heading in the same direction, and there's a lot of effort that's happening by all of our organizations, and I think we all have the same end goal. So whether we work closer together to achieve that goal, but for us, it's the same, and I think we can speak to multiple platforms, systems, and ways of doing things that we've all invested in those, but there isn't that payoff. The ease of doing business, we haven't realized that yet. So if we can bring things together and integrate them, consolidate them, that's where we're trying to focus. But there's a lot of roadblocks from an MGA perspective because you can only do so much, right? So that's where our carrier partners and everybody else comes into it. So really, more so than everybody, including us, working on our own things in a cave, I think we need to expand out a little bit and look at the industry as a whole and what we're all trying to work towards, because I can tell you it's probably the same thing. And just making sure that the end consumer and all of the steps in between are considered. And then really that's going to get us to that sweet spot for everybody.
Yeah. And Dave, probably good to end with you because you're an interesting mix of distributor and manufacturer. So maybe a little bit more reach in terms of what you can get to than the others. So, what is there anything that, you weren't doing that you feel like you're going to jump on and build on now and start changing pretty close?
I think we've been pretty fortunate to be able to make that frictionless consumer experience as much as possible, but obviously like you guys are all saying, there's a lot of work on the back end, how many hamster wheels are turning. So we need to make sure that automation complements the different staff from operations, call centers, new business, underwriting, all of those areas. So it's how do you tackle those different areas one at a time to make that back end frictionless for my customers, which is mostly my internal peers. And so that's what I've been working towards, and definitely making sure that the consumer experience is as frictionless as possible. So I see it as a combination, right? Where we're talking about automation and making things programmatic, you still obviously need people involved. You still need to see what that right balance is to get to your end state. And you'll never get full automation. It'll always be or your money back. In some cases, you'll get more scale. You'll be able to do more business. You'll be able to do maybe more with less, which is the goal, and more efficiently. So that's what we've been all over that, and we've seen some really awesome results.
Yep, sure. So, sort of last question. I think everyone on the panel has touched on this in some way, shape, or form. It was around concerns for the long term with the change forced on us, and move to digitalization, and cautionary notes. So, Dave, while we've got you going, anything from you, in terms of things that worry you as you look out a little further ahead with the environment being what it is now? Definitely,
like it's been the same thing for before COVID, but now it's definitely exacerbated is really the whole cyber threat and our whole threat landscape, right? We talked about working from home. We talked about our systems all being digital. Everything is data driven, from the conversion rates to the consumer behavior, and we're relying on all of these systems, and we have so many different entry points to protect, and the bad actors have become more and more sophisticated. So having a pulse on the way we deploy those services to make sure that the customer is safe and secure, we don't have reputational impact, we don't have system impact, customer impact, all of those things, that's what keeps me up at night, making sure that the cyber side, we're in good shape and we're ahead of the game.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I know that's real for us, and it's real in the context of conversations with those of you that are clients on this call as well, around just the what is up online now, and what that means that we're potentially exposed to. So Steve, I'll hand to you. Any concerns or cautionary notes to add from as we move ahead in this brave new environment?
I think David hit the nail on the head. If we're going to be more connected in the future, the data that we're sharing, data security is really, really important. I would also say, as we continue to move forward and evolve and innovate our business, are the regulators keeping up so that that doesn't hamper us? There's always a concern around what's happening on the front with respect to genetics and underwriting. Some of those things will keep insurers up awake at night. But I think David's comment was, that one, if we're sharing data, how do we protect it?
Yeah. Dennis, can't imagine the bank's too worried about anything in this domain, is it?
Yeah. Soundness and privacy, huge issue, and we hear of the data intrusion attempts and that it's really very, very high. So that's a challenge. That leads to what are all the pieces in place throughout the value chain, from the advisor to the distributor to the carrier to the paramedics to the labs, et cetera, making sure that's all connected. As we automate, we'll be relying on more data, and that will increase the amount of interaction there. So that's definitely a big issue. The one I look forward in the future to is regulatory. So I don't know if you noticed that the CCIR came out with some guidance a couple of days ago, and they are looking at fair treatment of customer and focusing on advisor oversight, also compensation structures as well. So that's entered in the conversation. So I suspect we'll be dealing with some changes on that over the next few years. But really, we're looking at user experience, both from the customer desire and the broker or advisor and distributor desire. How do we marry them, make that process seamless straight through as possible? And we're also on the product side looking, because customers seem to be going, I may want a simplified product, just make it simple and easy, or I'm looking for a product solution. For example, on our DI side, yes, we have disability insurance, but we have things that can help you support you when you have claims. So we have a number of things that helps an insured at claim time. We're looking at more things, more programs in terms of helping them for additional treatment programs and options. So we see customers starting to expect more than a product, a solution, and that solution includes a product, how it's done, how it's supported, how it's rolled out, all of those pieces going forward. So that's certainly something that's going to change. The acquisition processes we talked about, but I think there'll be stratification, further stratification, and use the introduction of a broker digital channel, for the lack of a better term, where it's so simple products are easy ones that are straight through and they're done with a broker, with an MGA, but done by and large electronically. Carriers also thinking, do you have sort of structured call centers for different product lines that would support as opposed to the distribution support by product lines, so your staff are knowledgeable on particular product lines, the one with more complex products, in-depth situations that have a higher degree of education, and you may be tailoring service offerings as a carrier as you go forward on that as well.
There's a lot there, Dennis, for sure. And Heidi, no wonder Dennis's hair is white.
I think that was a shameless plug for RBC there with the things they work on, but
no, I guess it's job security. There's so much to do, but who knows? That can change in a heartbeat. So
the original question, I think, was concerns for long term.
Yes.
So of course, security is number one. But really, I think it's just the notion that everyone is accessible all the time and the blurring of the lines. I just want to kind of get back to that. So because we're not traveling anymore and everyone's accessible, I think everyone's hours and available times and start times are earlier, end times are later. And Zoom fatigue is a real thing. We've implemented Zoom free Fridays about a month ago. I haven't had one yet, but it might come. That's real, right? I think it's even just our bodies is my concern. I think just being able to take a bio break in between meetings, shift focus and get back, because the real work happens after the Zoom day, and then the emails are until all hours of the night, or maybe that's just me, but starting to see a lot of that. So the fatigue is real. I think it's good timing to come up to a Christmas holiday season so everyone can kind of have a little bit of a recharge. But that is for sure something that I'm looking at personally and trying to ensure that my team is equally supported in that.
Thanks, Heidi. Well, we know who runs Financial Horizons, so Zoom free Friday. Good luck. And then Phil, back to you. Last word to you on this, Phil. I think you picked your last because I think you opened with some of the concerns here. Anything to add on long-term concerns that associated with the change?
No comment. No, just no. What I say, Simon, I think. And it's all everybody touched upon this, right? It's security for sure is a big issue. One, I'm concerned long term that we forget what we've lived through during these last 9 months, all the things that we've adapted to, and that we fall back into humans being a creature of habit. You go back into the way it used to be, and I think that'd be a big shame for us. We would not have learned anything through this pandemic. So I strongly urge all of us to keep pushing forward, that whatever we've lived through, these changes continue. The other concern I have is just from a humanity perspective and this pandemic we're living through. If these vaccines that are set to be coming out, how long before people get immunized and be protected against these vaccines? Is there another one coming down the line? Like, those are kind of real things to me that says, okay, we as an industry have done well, everybody involved. But as humanity, what's going to happen? Are we going to get on board? Are we going to get vaccinated? Are these vaccines going to work? What happens when there's a next pandemic? Are we going to be able to survive and turn things around? Those are concerns, and maybe it's because of age. And the older you get, the more you start to worry about the people that come behind you, and not so much about you. And what kind of world are we going to leave them, and how are they going to adapt? So I think we have to have learned something, not just us in this industry, but the world as a whole, in terms of how do we move forward? How do we prevent some of these things? It's the simplicity of, washing your hands. We talked about the masks, and the reality is wearing a mask now is becoming, second nature. Like, you just put it on and life goes on, and, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. There's worse things in life than having to wear a mask short term, right? So I think these are the things that really concern me. The industry, I think we've proven it once again that we can adapt, we can strike back and make changes that are necessary for us to survive. And it doesn't matter what's thrown at the industry, we've all been able to turn around. So that's what concerns me the most, Simon.
Thanks for that, Phil. And I think good time to turn to the chat, which has been quite quiet, just to see if anyone's got any questions they would like to pose at the panel in the 4 minutes that we have remaining, as we've cut out all opportunities for a bio break and instill Zoom fatigue as firmly as we can on this chat. So I don't know if there's anything coming in from the chat, but give it a couple of minutes. But in the interim, I just want to take the time to thank you, Phil, you, Heidi, you, Dave, you, Steve, and Dennis, for making the time to come and add such a lively, informative panel. I mean, I've taken a lot away from the conversation today, a lot of insight, and I think, Phil, like you, I see a lot of excellent people in this industry able to react when needs must. As a technology provider, I wish we could do it more often and more quickly. So, you know, and sad that it took a pandemic to do it. But if there's nothing more on chat, and I'm seeing there's nothing there still, I want to thank all the audience for attending Propel Canada today as well. Appreciate your time and your attention to the panel, and wish you a good rest of the day, and hopefully see you at some of the follow-up sessions. And again, thanks to the panelists. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.